He had built it from nothing. No trust fund, no seed round, no co-founders with impressive last names. Just an idea born in silence and sharpened by rejection. He started in a shared workspace he couldn't afford with borrowed hardware and open-source codes stitched together by sleepless nights. Back then, nobody cared. There were no invites to demo days. No interest from recruiters. No email introductions from people with clout. Just problems that needed solving and one man willing to keep solving them no matter who noticed. Years passed. Quietly. He grew the product one user at a time. Answered every support ticket himself. Cold emailed leads. Walked into meetings wearing the same jacket each time. They rarely led anywhere. But the ones that did mattered. One by one, the clients stayed. Then told their friends. Then signed renewals. Slowly, the company took shape. Not around hype, but around results. He didn't hire fast. He hired real. People who had something to prove. People who didn't look like founders or fit glossy headshots. People like him. For a while, it worked. Until it grew. And with growth came people who thought structure meant hierarchy and hierarchy meant protection. They brought in consultants. HR frameworks. Culture documents that sounded progressive but felt like walls. Then came the dilution. Investors who saw only the metrics. Board members who said things like optics and brand perception. His name faded from the press kits. His title shrank on the organizational chart. Until one day, the company he had built no longer looked like something he recognized. And he let it go. On paper, at least. He stepped back. Not out of defeat. Out of curiosity. He wanted to see what they would do without him. And they did what so many do when the builders leave and the operators take over. They made it pretty. They made it cold. He watched quietly from the sidelines. Read the job listings. Watch the careers page fill with phrases like best of the best and exceptional pedigree required. He saw who was being hired. And more importantly, who wasn't. Then one day he walked in. Unannounced. Not to make a scene. To take a pulse. He entered the lobby in a simple coat, holding a folder. Said he was there to apply. The receptionist didn't recognize him. She gave him a form. Said the process was competitive. That they only accepted highly qualified candidates. He sat down. Watched the people move. Watched the walls they had built. He waited 45 minutes. And then the executive team walked through. Loud. Dressed like they were always heading to a keynote. One of them saw him. Stopped mid-sentence. Recognition hit like a gust of wind. Sir, he stood. Offered the folder. The man opened it. Incorporation documents. With one name. His. No resume. Just roots. And roots always remember what the branches forget. The silence after the folder changed the temperature of the room. The executive's fingers paused on the paper like it might bite. The logo at the top, the same one now printed on glass doors and polished brochures, had been drawn by him years ago in the corner of a coffee-stained notebook. The receptionist looked back and forth between the two men, unsure whether to apologize or disappear. He didn't say a word. He just looked around. The company had grown. In all the ways it was supposed to. The furniture was expensive. The plants real. The walls buzzed with curated energy and team-building mantras that hadn't existed when he ran things alone with one second-hand laptop and an internet bill paid in coins. But beneath the surface gloss, he saw it clearly. Distance. Between departments. Between people and purpose. They'd built walls and called it culture. The executive stumbled through a welcome, his words slick but hollow. Invited him upstairs. Offered coffee. Asked if he was just dropping in. He nodded. I'm here to observe. That was all. No declarations. No threat. No fanfare. Just presence. The office hadn't seen him in nearly a year. He kept his distance during the last investment round. Let the board install their team. Let operations drift into the hands of consultants who'd never written a single line of the platform's original code. They had said he was too involved. Too scrappy. Too founder-minded. Now they sat across from him in a meeting room that used to be a closet. The same man who once soldered the first server by hand was now being offered a bottled water and a slideshow of projected growth metrics. He didn't flinch. He listened. They told him about new initiatives. About streamlining talent pipelines. About optimizing retention through culture refinement. He asked one question. How many of your last 10 hires didn't go to college? The air tightened. They glanced at each other. One finally said, we look for top-tier talent. People who bring a certain standard. He nodded. Standard. Then he asked another. How many of those 10 are first generation? Again, no one answered. He leaned back. Because he already knew. He had seen it coming. The company had grown, yes, but it had also calcified, turned from an idea into a gate. And now, the very people it had been built for wouldn't survive the application process. That afternoon, he sat in on interviews. Silently. Just listened. He watched promising candidates walk in and out. Saw who got callbacks and who didn't. Watched how credentials were weighed over potential. Watched how polish mattered more than passion. And as he walked back through the lobby that evening, he passed the receptionist who hadn't let him through that morning. She smiled now. Nervously. He smiled back. No anger. Just memory. Because sometimes before you fix something, you need to feel how far it drifted from where it began. He returned the next day. Early. Before the office filled with curated noise and the echo of practiced greetings. He sat at the long window in the break area, a place no one had used for anything but quick coffee in years. The view overlooked the city, buildings rising into the morning haze, streets still quiet, everything about to come to life. It reminded him of the early days when the city was his backdrop and his ambition was his only constant. He watched the team arrive. Some on bikes, some in cars, most with headphones in and eyes down. No one looked up. No one noticed him. And that was fine. He wanted to see the machine work on its own. To feel where it had jammed. He slipped into meetings without announcing himself. The engineers didn't recognize him. They shared decks about sprints and code reviews and velocity metrics. He listened as they spoke in circles, solving problems that weren't problems. Refining systems that had once been built to break barriers but now only maintained control. In marketing, the team debated how to humanize the brand. They ran A/B tests on colors that evoke trust. He said nothing. He didn't need to. There was no trust problem in the brand. There was a trust problem in the building. Midday, he pulled aside one of the junior engineers. A quiet guy. First year on the job. Good eye for logic. Clean commits. They sat by a vending machine that buzzed louder than the conversation nearby. How do you like it here? He asked. The engineer blinked. It's polished, he said. Then paused. A little too polished, maybe. He nodded. That's what he had been feeling too. Everything had been smoothed down so much it lost its texture. The rawness. The friction that made room for real thought. That afternoon, he walked past the HR director's office. Inside, a woman sat reviewing candidate profiles. He recognized the layout, the filtering tool, an algorithm that scored resumes on education, past employment, language structure. He stepped inside. May I ask, he said, what happens to the ones who don't meet the score threshold? The woman looked up. Those are filtered out before we review manually, she said. We only move forward with profiles that meet the qualification index. He nodded, then asked to see the list of filters. It was there. Degree bias. Language familiarity. School ranking weight. The system didn't reject bad candidates. It rejected unfamiliarity. It rejected difference. He didn't need to shout. He simply reached over, clicked one line, and disabled the algorithm. The HR director sat frozen. He stood. I built this place, he said, and I didn't need a resume to do it. That evening, he went home. No press, no confrontation, just a quiet rewrite in the foundations. Because that's how revolutions happen inside companies. Not with announcements, but with edits that let the right people in. It took less than a week for the changes to ripple through the system. Subtle at first, like dust finally shaken loose from a long-sealed vent. The hiring team didn't say anything, but they noticed the sudden shift. Resumes that once went straight to the trash queue now reappeared in review. Candidate names they didn't recognize from polished networks started appearing on interview slots. There was confusion, then frustration, then curiosity. Someone called a meeting, not because anyone knew exactly what had changed, but because something had. The HR director sat in front of the team, notes trembling slightly in her hand. She tried to explain the policy revision without naming who had made it. But they knew. Everyone knew. The founder wasn't hiding anymore. He was in the building, not as a symbol, as a presence. Meanwhile, Andre moved through departments with quiet precision. Not with critique, with care. He joined product brainstorming sessions, listened to the designers instead of the managers, asked junior developers what features customers were asking for, and what blockers no one at the top was fixing. They told him stories, not complaints, observations, process drift, feature bloat, a loss of clarity. The company had been built to serve. Now it was serving itself. He didn't issue memos. He gave green lights. One by one, projects long shelved for being too risky were revived. A customer feedback portal that had been paused was re-enabled. A beta program for underserved markets was approved overnight. Engineers who had once been told to stay in scope now found their tickets doubled because they were finally solving real pain points again. And the hiring changed. Applicants began showing up who didn't look the part, but built like they belonged. One wore worn sneakers and carried a tablet full of designs better than the last agency they'd hired. Another had no degree, just 10,000 hours of troubleshooting back-end systems no one else wanted to touch. One woman applied with a video link instead of a CV. The team debated whether to consider her. He watched the room go silent when someone said, "We're supposed to evaluate qualifications." He smiled. She just did. They hired her. A month later, she rewrote half the onboarding documents that no one understood but everyone had been pretending to. Meanwhile, the board began to stir. They liked the numbers because numbers never lie, but they didn't like the methods. Too informal, too founder-driven, too uncontrolled. Andre received the email after hours. It asked for a clarification of your current role. He didn't respond. Instead, he added a line to the internal wiki. No one is more qualified to shape a company than the people it was built for. Then he signed it. Founder. Nothing else. The next morning, the staff noticed it on the homepage of their system. No one questioned who put it there. They just logged in differently, straighter, lighter, because something they'd never seen was now in the walls again. Someone who remembered. By the 5th month, the company no longer walked with a limp. The stiffness in the hallway conversations had softened. People no longer rehearsed their words before speaking. They spoke, and the rooms began to breathe. Meetings started opening with questions instead of declarations. Brainstorms included names that had never been invited before. The office still looked the same. Same lights, same walls, same sliding doors, but the current underneath had shifted. Andre kept showing up, not with orders, with ears. He walked through departments that had been designed for silos and open side doors. Not metaphorically, literally. He had 3 glass dividers removed in the operations floor. Not because they blocked sight lines, but because they had become quiet walls of permission. He asked someone in finance what they thought of a UX redesign. They blinked, confused. He nodded. Everyone uses the product. Everyone should shape it. The next version of the dashboard launched 3 weeks later. And it worked better. Because someone who didn't code had seen what no engineer could. But beneath the change, he still felt resistance. It didn't live in people. It lived in legacy. In the old documents. The buried policies. The invisible weights of precedent. So he opened the archive. The original folders. The first pitch decks. The user interviews from the early years. The manifesto. He called it that even though it was just a page and a half scribbled during a storm in a co-working basement. The page where he had written why the company needed to exist in the first place. Not to make disruption, but to make entry. He printed it. Just 1 copy. And he taped it to the inside of the glass wall behind reception. No quote marks. No signature. Just the words. One afternoon, a candidate came for an interview. Young. Quiet. No LinkedIn profile. Her shoes were scuffed. Her voice small. But she kept looking at the page on the wall. When she was asked why she applied, she pointed to it. Said, "Because I believe that too." They hired her. She built an internal tool that cut onboarding time in half. No announcement. Just delivery. Meanwhile, the board pushed harder. They wanted quarterly statements that sparkled. They wanted packaging. They wanted polish. Andre showed them product feedback from users in low connectivity regions who said they could finally use the app without freezing. The board didn't clap. He didn't need them to. He was building for someone else. That week, a former employee stopped by. He had left 2 years earlier. Said the place was going too corporate. Now he walked through and said it felt like something had come back. Andre nodded. Not something. Someone. Because the company had lost its founder once. But now it had found itself. Not by changing direction, but by remembering why it had started moving at all. Month 6 arrived without a headline. No public statement. No press release announcing a cultural shift. But everyone in the building felt it. The walls were warmer. Not physically, but atmospherically. Something about the way people paused longer in conversations or how new hires asked questions without checking themselves first. There were more what-ifs, fewer "that's not how we do it." The company hadn't rebranded. It had remembered. And remembrance, when real, does more than revitalize. It rewrites. Andre sat at the back of the all-hands meeting that Friday. The room wasn't fancy. Just wide windows and rows of mismatched chairs. People sat on the floor. No stage. No teleprompter. No executive addresses that echoed like corporate lullabies. Instead, someone from support talked about a feature they'd helped test in real time with live users. A junior dev explained a small bug fix that ended up saving thousands in back-end costs. A new hire from an alternative school demoed a tool she'd built in her second week. And the most surprising part? No one clapped out of obligation. They clapped because it meant something again. Andre took notes. Not to give feedback. To learn. Because even founders don't know everything. After the meeting, he walked through the office slowly. Every face he passed looked him in the eye. Not out of fear. Not even reverence. But recognition. As if to say, we're building it now too. You don't have to carry it alone. He stopped by the same receptionist desk where he'd been told not long ago that they only hire the highly qualified. She was still there. Embarrassed at first. But he smiled. She smiled back. Because forgiveness, when quiet, still echoes louder than pride. Upstairs, the boardroom was empty. He stood at the head of the table, looked out across the skyline, thought about how many decisions had been made in that room without context, about how many names had been filtered out by systems that claimed neutrality but coded exclusion. He pulled a marker from the tray, wrote a sentence on the whiteboard. Not a quote, just a direction. Qualified doesn't mean familiar. It means ready. He left it there. Didn't sign it. Didn't need to. Everyone would know. The following Monday, the hiring system rolled out its new pilot version. No GPA filter. No alma mater waiting. Portfolios optional. Video intros accepted. More humans reading fewer keywords. And just like that, doors reopened. Not physically. Culturally. Spiritually. Meaningfully. Andre didn't stay for applause. He boarded the elevator. Stepped outside. The sun was the same. The air felt lighter. He didn't need to come back tomorrow. Because legacy isn't in plaques or founder bios. It's in systems that let others rise without permission. And now finally, the company he had built no longer asked whether someone looked qualified. It asked what they could do. And who they could become.